everyone hear me?
We're alive.
Yes, we can hear you fine. Welcome, everyone,
Excellent.
to the
Okay.
Muslim Street. This is your co-host, Hina Lotus. Today, we have a full house. We have my co-host, Malik Aziz, of course. We have Art Mobley. We also have Dr. V. Issa White. He is a respected historian. And then we are actually interviewing Hassan Ali today. If everyone can kind of go around and introduce themselves really quick before we get started, that would be amazing. Hassan, if you actually want to go first, especially since you will be the person we'll be interviewing today in regards to your book.
Sure. Okay, my name is Hassan Ali. Assalamu alaikum and peace to everyone. I'm the author of the book Incipients and a longtime friend of Malik Aziz and also friend of Dr. Vibert White. And through many degrees of networking and relationships, we have a very lengthy and strong brotherhood. I'm very honored to be on your platform, and I look forward to a very lively and enriching discussion.
We're humbled to have you on. Thank you so much. And then, of course, Art Mobley needs no introduction, but for any newcomers to our show, if you'd please introduce yourself, we'd really be humbled.
Unmute your mic.
Art's actually on mute right now, so we're going to come back to him. Malik, you obviously need no... Yes, we can hear you. Actually, Art, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Arthur Mobley, and I am a Pan-Africanist, and I am in the States, and I'm in Arizona, but I've been a long time broadcaster, broadcast owner, and happy to be here.
We're humbled to have you. And then Dr. White, you're a very respected historian. If you could please introduce yourself to our audience, we'd be super happy.
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. It's wonderful to be on your show. Thank you, Malik, and others for the invite. Yes, I'm a professor, having held tenure at the University of Illinois and the University of Central Florida, and also having taught in England, Ghana, as well as in Brazil. I'm a freedom fighter. That's the most important thing. Author of several books. But the most important thing is that I'm happy to be on the show and to listen and share some ideas so we can move forward as a people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're humbled and we love having revolutionaries on our show. So I think you'll fit in just fine. And then last but not least, the founder of the Muslim Street, my amazing co-host. It's been a while since he's been on, so I'm super excited today. Malik, if you could just introduce yourself for any newcomers, we'd be super humbled.
Yeah, awesome. So Malik Aziz, and one of the things that we're going to dive into is a new set of energy around the Pan-African movement and coming up with solutions to move forward. This is a great discussion. It's an intellectual discussion. It's a discussion on theory and practice. Also, I think that as we see on the internet, as it moved toward what Dr. Conrad Worrell, the National Black United Front, a true Pan-Africanist who passed away a few years ago, said to me that we're in an age of anti-intellectualism and anti-academianism, largely due to social media, right? Everybody has an opinion, and as long as they had a pretty face and whatever, they seem to scale. But it's groups and discussions like you're going to hear tonight that will lend to the type of scholarship of some of the great scholars of the past. We just lost last week Dr. Jawanza Kanjufu, who was a Pan-Africanist, who wrote his seminal piece, A Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, back in 1983. We lost, as I mentioned, Dr. Conrad Worrell. We lost Dr. Anderson Thompson in the African community of Chicago. So the Pan-African thought and theory is kind of dwindling away. It's going to come to our shoulders. We do have some extraordinary thought leaders around this and revolutionaries, people like Omali Yeshitela of Uhuru. The United States government under the Joe Biden administration went after him and his entire group with the type of FBI raids that we saw in the late 1960s and early 70s, during which the United States government defeated the Black Power movement using the system of COINTELPRO. So they're noticing us. Again, the discussion that we have here, I'm going to propose even up front that I know the discussion is going to be off the chain, that this expands in a part 2, a part 3, and a part 4. Part 2 will include an expanded range of scholars in the Pan-Africanist space. Part 3 and 4, again, as we move to some actual on-the-ground solutions around that. But really want to focus tonight with the panel discussing Hassan Ali's piece, Insipidus. And if you, my book just came today. So Hassan,
Yes.
I ordered it, and there's some supply chain problems when you're ordering from Amazon. I wish I could have got this directly to you. From you, but I want to encourage the listening audiences to go out and purchase this book, begin the discussions amongst your group, include this as part of a book club discussion. We used to have book club discussions, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and we were talking about struggle. And we used to meet at Black bookstores. We used to have panel discussions. Everybody's gotten away from that because now with social media, everybody wants to be Merv Griffin. You got nothing to talk about. All right. So I think that discussions like this will serve as a framework where we begin to talk about true Pan-African struggle. Africa is on the hot list. There's no question about it. It is attention and ground zero. Everybody can feel the energy moving toward Africa. Last thing I want to say before we jump into the discussion, the Darfur 23, and we'll talk a little bit about this with Art Mobley, who convened the Darfur 23 with yours truly back in 2007. A few years ago, we were working toward a reenactment of what was called the Morocco bloc that met in 1961 on the heels of 1960, where 2/3 of all of Africa gained its independence from the Europeans. And it was a significant conference because there was a split on the African continent as they moved toward organizing around what was then to become the Organization of African Unity. One bloc, as I mentioned, the Casablanca bloc, that included Mohammed V, Morocco. It included Sekou Touré of Guinea, and Nkrumah, Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt. And then, and they were Pan-Africanists. They wanted a radical centralization of the African continent. And they received strong support for that. But they were opposed by another group called the Moravian bloc. And this Moravian group, they were moderate. They wanted to move away from their former colonial powers with a relationship that was gradual. And the ideas largely reflected what you find in the failed, and what I think is the failed Organization of African Unity. So let's talk about that. We were, the Darfur 23, were in the process of in the beginning stages of organizing a reenactment of that conference in Casablanca. And then COVID hit. So this is a prime discussion to have now. Again, things are happening now, and we're going to talk about all that good stuff, and I'll save that for a little later. So let's jump right into it with Hassan. Can you give us just a summary of your goals and objectives around writing a book? Who would you like it to reach? What kind of message that you want to organize around moving forward?
Okay. That's a really great question, a great way to open it. My target group is the generation that's coming after us, because I'm 54 years old now, and by natural progression, I may have 20 to 25 years left on the planet. So I'm also an agriculturalist. I'm saying that because I have a practical understanding that the tree that you plant today, you may never eat its fruit. So I'm not targeting anything or any objectives that I may see the actual outcome of in my lifetime, but I have children, I have grandchildren, And I want to set a precedent for those that are coming after me. So that's my target group, is the younger people who have been inundated with uh, extreme sensory overload on every level, with the purpose of just befuddling them and just bewildering them, making them basically just addicts to dopamine and to clickbait, and they become unable to learn. So all of the work that people like yourself, Brother Malik, and Brother Art, and of course Dr. White, and I'm not speaking to them in absence of you, sister, but I'm speaking to them because we kind of share a commonality of age, and then some of them may even have me by a couple of years. So all the work that they put in anonymously, I refuse to leave this world without making some sort of contribution to continue the momentum of the work that they've done, and the teachers that poured into them did as well. So my target group is anyone with eyes and ears, but especially the younger Black and melanated people, however you want to term it, in this country, in the diaspora, all around the world.
Great. Now, Art, we were coming out of the Bandung conference that Malcolm talked about in 1955. Hassan Ali is going to speak to that in a little bit, vis-a-vis his book. We were also coming out of around the Casablanca block meeting, the Non-Aligned movement. These are two strategic events and groups and sort of congresses, as opposed to conferences that took place. And Kwame Ture did an excellent job at describing the difference between a Congress, at the Pan-African Congress of 1945 as an example, and then what happened in 1920, the Pan-African Conference. Okay, so one of the interesting necessities, I think, for total African liberation was what happened in Casablanca with Mohammed V and Gamal Abdel Nasser and Nkrumah, is that they were talking eventually, and I think just by the nature of it, of North Africa, a Pan-African and then a Pan-Arab vision. The importance of Art, I want you to talk about the importance of Pan-Africanism merging with the Pan-Arab front.
Well, I think that the conference in Casablanca, of course, was extremely important. And even though the conference that was going on in Monrovia, they were split on the idea of whether or not to move aggressively towards unifying the African continent. That's somewhere we're back to again here some 70 some years later, close to 70 years later. And we still have that same division on the continent. I've studied over the years, and you mentioned it earlier, Malik, that we used to have times when we would sit down and discuss books. We would discuss subject matter. We had a group here in the Southwest called the Cross-Cultural Discussion Group. And it was a Pan-African group because they had members from the African community who were regionally located, and we'd just get together and we'd discuss really important topics. This is back in the 70s. This is back in the late 70s. But it is really important that we step away from the social media traps, has been mentioned, and get back to just some good, strong research and study of things at a cellular level, at a face-to-face level, so that we can really resolve and get things done without a lot of distraction. The media is definitely a distraction, and certainly social media is even more of a distraction. But getting back to the Casablanca conference, you mentioned some of the participants who were there, Milcar Cabral and of course Kwame Nkrumah and Patrice Lumumba, even Nelson Mandela, and a few other people were there. Those revolutionaries, those freedom fighters, thinking very very specifically about how do we unite the continent? How do we form a united federation of African states? How do we move? Gabel Nasser was there as well, of Egypt, a very important and key figure in what was going on at the time. Um, and we really needed to have that discussion as we had it. Uh, I think there was a little bit of a resistance movement coming out of colonialism to try and keep the borders that the colonialists had drawn in Africa, and those borders are the present borders. And if we really look at Africa, we see even more borders being created. We see more fractionalization, balkanization, if you will, of the African continent, unfortunately. But it's the same plantation mentality being carried over so that people feel fixated on the idea of this was my colonial heritage land since the Berlin Conference of 1885, 86. And because these borders are fixed and drawn, we've gotten used to them, we've gotten comfortable in them, and this is our plantation that we can sit on and we can maintain. And those were the two ideas. Unite the continent as one, get rid of all of the borders, go back to a time and a situation where Africa was united or remain split and divided as the colonialists had drawn the borders. So it would seem to be a very fundamental, simple thing for people to reason out and understand that, hey, we just need to get rid of these borders. We need to go back to something that's Afrocentric. Forget what Europe brought, forget what Europe imposed, and move back to something that was much more conducive to African unity. So those were the two arguments. And one other thing I might add is that the Federation of African States that Nkrumah proposed sought to keep those borders, but just digress all of the nations or the countries that were claiming nationhood, back them down to states, and this have a united federation of African states, and they operate the same way the United States of America does. It was the United States of Africa in that situation, and that was the proposal. But that was the only piece I wanted to add, and we can double back, and I wanted to get some more opinions from some of the other panelists.
Yeah, Dr. White, you've done a lot of your post degree studies, and you're considered an expert as we talk about from a history perspective and truly Pan-Africanism as it relates to the West Indies and Central and South America, and it's an important historical play that people like Henry Sylvester Williams and the first and initial Pan-African conference that took place in 1900. He comes out of the West Indies. When we talk about Pan-Africanism and moving forward, we have to tap into every segment of the diaspora. Can you kind of speak to the importance of the Caribbean and your studies down there and what you found as it relates to the fervent of the people on the ground toward Pan-Africanism?
It's not only the Caribbean, but it's also Latin America, Central America, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, as well as Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Peru, and so forth, that have significant African populations that has been on the edge of Pan-Africanism for a long, long time. If you go to Bahia, Salvador, a place that I go to often, you'll find that there is a groundswell of Pan-Africanism, especially in its cultural mechanisms. But because of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now the Pan-Africanism trend is going into the direction of economic growth. In the Caribbean, yes, it's heavy there, especially during the days of Gaddafi, when he was talking about Pan-Africanism and developing an African state in Africa, one state, he was also including the Caribbean into that mix as a way to forge alliances, but also the strength of the African in this Western Hemisphere. Of course, when you look at it historically, as you stated, Sylvester Stevens, James, George Patmore, they were pillars in helping us to understand through their writings, through their organization, what Pan-Africanism meant, what were the possibilities, and where would it be in years long after their deaths. So I'm glad that you brought forth this question about the Caribbean and Latin America. In fact, you cannot have a Pan-Africanist movement and exclude the Caribbean and Central and South America at all. You can't have it.
Yeah, one of the things, if I go to Hassan with a very important question that he's going to relate to, was that in 1945, at the Fifth Pan-African Congress, Padmore is there with Dr. Du Bois, right. And Padmore, of course, again, coming from the Caribbean. One of the things that those on the outside looking in who really didn't understand the path of Pan-Africanism said, where are the Africans? Well, Africa was under the pressure of colonialism, right? And the whole theme of Pan-Africanism and its diaspora, when one part of the mothership was under pressure, the other parts of the diaspora rose up. And it was what happened at the Fifth Pan-African Congress in 1945 put an extreme amount of pressure on the idea of colonialism that led to what happened in 1960, where 2/3 of Africa was free. It was directly related to that. So we want to make sure that we highlight the importance of, we want all hands on deck in order to bring down the hegemony of the white power construct. And that, we literally going to need all hands on deck to understand that. So having said that, before I bring Hina back in for a few questions, Hassan, you spent a lot of time in the African Maghreb, and particularly in Morocco. About less than a week ago, there was a big move, a Pan-African move that was taking place. I'm telling you, this thing is moving. The energy is there, and we have to get on board on this. And we have to be the leaders in that discussion from this perspective. People like Omala Yeshitilla, Darob Ben Wahad. We're going to get Darob on, Hina. I just got to track him down, get him locked in. But less than a week ago, the alliance of the Sahel states, also known as AES, which includes Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Morocco joined in. Okay, and this is serious. So the nature of this major Pan-African move that is going to piss off the Europeans, their former colonial masters, and it definitely has, because once Africa starts talking to each other, it's over. So Hassan, the question that I want you to ask some clarification to, both you and I have traveled extensively through Morocco. And when people from the outside looking in, they go, oh yeah, those Arabs over there, first mistake, Morocco is not Arab. The predominant people in Morocco are what the Europeans call Berber, and what the indigenous people there call Amazigh. All right, let's be clear about that. And then the other piece I want you to speak to, just kind of anecdotally, Hassan, in your travels there, and I'll kind of mention it, but I want you to run with it. I've been to towns, Art and Viper and Hina in Morocco, where I thought I was on the south side of Chicago, literally. And if I left the south side, and I'm talking about places like Layoum and El Rashidia, Tiznit, Essaouira, black folks, wall to wall. Hassan, join in that conversation and kind of give us some anecdotal connection, because I think it's important that we humanize and clarify at the same time what people are thoroughly confused about.
with regard to this conversation of Arabs and all this sort of thing, how they identify, is that what you're speaking to?
Yes.
Okay. That is something that I'm very passionate about because um, as a Muslim, I've been taught and I understand that people are identified by their language. So there is no one model for what an Arab is. It definitely is not something that's going to be defined by the European construct of nationalism, bordered states where there's a Palestinian, people might think that because they've been exposed to that for about the past 80 to 100 years, but that's a total error. Arabs traditionally recognize people in two ways, Arab and Ajam, meaning a person who's originally, this is his lineage, back to the Qahtani people, and then there are people that had assumed the Arabic tongue and Arabic lifestyle, which of course became predominated by Islam with the advent of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. So it was never something where they appeared like one way. They look like lighter skinned people, or most of those people that you see that even look that way have been their gene pool was heavily influenced by Ottoman occupation for 700 to 800 years. In fact, traditionally, Arab meant black. That's how they identified them, and even their system of identifying color. Red, hamra was identified as is translated into white, not the literal word abiyat white. No, it is different. And then severely black was seen as blue, azrak. So there's a whole traditional identification method that has been uh, kind of blotted out by Eurocentric ignorance. That's just been the predominant thing. So when people come with that approach of, oh, those Arabs over there, they're just speaking from a point of ignorance, and I'm not saying that critically. It's just a fact. So in Morocco, I can remember once being at uh, a train station, and a gentleman asking me where I was from because we were communicating in Arabic. He said, "Are you from Sudan?" And in most instances, I would say yes because it just shortens the conversation. When they hear me and the way I'm speaking to them, if I say American, that's just a whole 2 hour conversation I really don't have time for. But because of my exposure to the Gulf region and some of the inherent uh, racist identification methods people have there from their exposure to this savage European, to ask someone is he a Sudani can sometimes be insulting. So anyway, when I said to this man, I said something kind of derisive to him, and he said, "Listen, Habibi," he said, "we're all African here." And when he said that, it really humbled me and put me back into perspective. Like, wait a minute, this is the Maghreb. It's different. It just literally is different. So when you speak about this stance that um, uh, King Muhammad V, sixth, excuse me, has taken with opening his ports so that the Sahelian states have a way to import and export, and relaxing the border controls between them. It's very consistent with the way Moroccans have been. I'm married to a Moroccan and I have children in Morocco, and I know that they don't identify themselves with this, by and large, with this Eurocentric tinged um, white loving thing that some of our Arab brothers, unfortunately, have been tricked into taking on in the last, 50 or 60 years. So it's definitely, I think, going to be a linchpin as we move forward and as things develop in this really beautifully Pan-Africanist way, because now it just seems like it's just taken on a life of its own. There aren't really any figures that you can identify in our community or even abroad, with perhaps the exception of Ibrahim Traore, this heroic young man from Burkina Faso. There aren't like as many figures like you could maybe 60 years ago say, oh, this one, in Nkrumah and in Kenyatta, and this one. It's like it just seems like it's just happening from the grassroots. So hopefully we can have positions of service to these young people as they become aware of what's going on, and hopefully we can offer some semblance of stewardship when they need our help. But yeah, as far as Morocco, it really is a potential hotbed in a very positive way for the way things are going from a Pan-Africanist perspective.
Yeah, great synopsis, because I think it's important again that we humanize the situation, especially you didn't read about it, you didn't hear about it, you saw it and you talked to it, and
Yes, that's right.
that's it. I remember a few years ago, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I was in Casablanca, and I heard this song being repeated over and over again. And I asked my host, Brother Amin, I said, Amin, what are they saying? He said, we're changing the name from Casablanca to Casa Negra. So, I mean, it was the popular hit of that summer, Casa Negra. So anyway, thanks for that, Brother Hassan. And we'll come back
Yes.
to you. One thing that I want to talk about before I go to art, and that is I talked about in part 1 and part 2 and part 3 and part 4, a call to action at the end of it. This is the beginning of framework for us to move the Pan-African movement forward. Not that there are others who are working very hard. I talked about Amali Yeshitila and Uhuru. Everybody needs to plug into him, plug into his work, his seminal work, Equilibrium, which sets out his framework for African nationalism. We talked about Dorob and Wahad, and there's others that we're going to invite into the Muslim street. Dr. Ray Wimbush and Dr. Jared Ball at Morgan State University. Kofi Tahaka, the National Black United Front. Dr. Oba Tashaka, who is a master organizer, and needs to be part of that discussion. Adanya Salam, a sister up in Michigan, and others. So this is going to grow. This is the beginning stages of, at least from our perspective and our angle, of interjecting into this movement. But Africa anywhere, Africa everywhere. So art, as we talk about growing the Pan-African movement, from our perspective and really, heating this thing up. You got anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I would say that it's not so much that we're growing the Pan-African movement. The Pan-African movement has grown and walking out the door with the car keys. When you look at what's going on the continent right now, and we've discussed and debated these things in very earnest efforts and circles since the 1950s, actually going back as far as the World War II. I mean, World War II was, a lot of it was fought in Africa, and it was supposed to be a freedom war. It was freedom for Europe, and it was freedom for Europeans to do what they wanted to do, but it didn't quietly and secretively include Africa. But from the standpoint of Africans who were involved, my father fought in the U.S. Army and was stationed and staged in North Africa and fought from there. So even Africans who were part of the diaspora, whether they came from Latin America or the Caribbean or wherever, participated in that war. And after that war, everybody was dividing up everything and they wanted to come back home. And they said, well, what are we going to do? We had this fight for freedom. What about Africa? What about our various areas of the Northern Hemisphere, the Caribbean and Latin America? What about those areas? We need freedom as well. And we made it applicable. We made a pact way back then to make it applicable to everyone, to all African people, wherever we were on the planet as far as that was concerned. But Africa is our home base. It is the home of all African people, like China is the home of all people who are of Chinese descent, and Russia is the home of people from Russia, India, Japan. Everyone recognizes the importance of tying their geopolitical struggles to the land. Africa has to mature and grow up. Black people have to mature and grow up to understand that we are nothing on this planet without land, without Africa. Africa needs to be free. Africa will be free. And this is what the Casablanca Conference set down to punctuate. The Moravian conference wanted to take a little bit more of a gradualist approach. And we're up to here with gradualism. We can't stand any more gradualism. We can't talk about what's going on in the Sahel states today and that liberation movement and what they have been able to achieve lightning fast in the last few years without talking about what went on in Southern Africa 30 years ago. There was a movement in Southern Africa to free Mozambique and Angola, and then also those were Portuguese former colonies. And then there was, like I said, Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe. They all band together. They banded together militarily and formed what was called the Patriotic Front. And we can't skip over that very vital movement that almost completely freed Southern Africa at that time. And it's still very instrumental in what's happening in the Sahel. It was connected to what was happening in Algeria and in Egypt. But it's because of this dynamic, when we can free one area of Africa, another area is used against those free areas. And that's why it is so important that we all understand, and we all understand the need to free all of the land so that we can have none of these areas where imperialism can get back in and instigate divisiveness among those free states and come in and do the things that they do to disrupt. They're going to continue to do that, and it's just something that we have to understand. In totality, we need to free all of Africa so that it recedes to the people that it belongs to, and the people who are naturally the birthright recipients of Africa, and that is the Black people of the world.
Before I go to Hassan for a very important question around the issue of the Bandung Conference and some of the stuff he's organized around with, Dr. White, I want you and Lance to kind of pipe in on this. And Art, you might want to say a few words here vis-a-vis the work, a decade, 2 decades ago that Dr. Sullivan was doing around this issue. And this is a 2-part kind of issue to address. One is the students of demography have said that in the next 25 years, Africa will add literally 1 billion people. If they're saying that, we know that number is going to be 2 billion, and they're going to be doing everything they can to attack that. Eugenics movement, vaccinations are part of that eugenics movement, viruses, and etc. Now, the point I want to make about that, and Dr. White, I'd like you to speak to this, is just as we saw here in the United States as a small case example, post World War II, you had a generation called the baby boomers. An economy, the largest economy emerges in that generation, and they follow that generation of baby boomers all the way up into present day, and they've reached their retirement and they're aging out. This is what grew the American economy, from an economic perspective. Africa, with roughly in 25 years, with over 3 billion people on that African continent, it will become the central point of the world in terms of its economy. Right now, the reason I want Lance to kind of jump in that, and I mentioned Dr. Sullivan Art, and Dr. White, you first up on this, is that over the last 5 to 7 years, there's been a movement on the African continent, really kind of inspired by Ghana, where Lance is, to reach out to the general ordinary people in the African diaspora, be they from Chicago or Mississippi or New York, be they from the Caribbean, or South America to repatriate back home to the motherland. Can you talk about, Dr. White, kind of what that means culturally in terms of normalizing and feeding into the movement?
Well, first, what I'd like to do is to talk about and briefly look at the fact that the evolution of Pan-Africanism right now on the continent. When we're talking about Africans in the diaspora going back, we're also talking about 4 different layers of growth in Pan-Africanism that also includes the diasporic Blacks. That is economic development and control. When we talk about economic development and control, we're talking about Africa now being able to control its own gold, its lithium, its cobalt, its oil, its silver, its iron ore, etc., etc., etc. In fact, when we talk about Ghana, I don't know if Lance is aware that yesterday, the president of Ghana stated that we will take control over our own gold mines now. They put stipulations now on foreign interests and multinationals that has been controlling its gold. And that's very important because much of the gold for the last century and a half, 98.7% of it has been in the hands of Europeans and Americans. Now that element has completely changed. When we also talk about Pan-Africanism now and the evolution and dealing with Leon Sullivan and so forth, we're talking about a new cultural identity. Before, when we spoke about Pan-Africanism, we spoke of the identity of speaking a language, dressing a certain way, even doing some dances, and that's culturalism. However, now when you talk about cultural identity, you're talking about a whole new moral code of values that has taken over. Now, what does this mean? The last administration, Biden administration, tried to push homosexuality and transgender issues onto Africa. And the majority of the African countries, except for one, stated that we don't want these values. And the United States responded that if you don't, we will sanction you. And they responded by saying, go ahead. We have China and Russia and India that we can trade with. Then the third level is institutional development. Now, what is that about? The Africans now are looking at their own development of their own educational system. If you look at Senegal, they have in the last 6 months has pushed Western ideology from the French out of their books. We see the same thing that's beginning to take place in Ghana. We see it in East Africa, such as Tanzania and Burundi and Uganda. So we're seeing those elements. And the last element with this, but again, going back to Leon Sullivan, is that the global power. Now, what is the global power with Pan-Africanism that is growing now? It means one, the military power, all right, coming together, developing. It means two, economic power again, with the United African State and coming together with Pan-Africanism, they can essentially have the longest coastline in the world, which means real trade and development. Now, one brother was talking about briefly about some of the states fighting against colonialism and neocolonialism. We still have that problem there. Even though I talked about the greatness was taking place with Africa and this new movement, we still see that ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, you see how they have pushed back against Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso.
And Morocco.
And Morocco. And it's good that you are from Morocco and the brother is married to a Moroccan, because Morocco now, when they were pushing back, Morocco said, listen, if these African states do not want you to use their coastline and their ports, you can use ours. Right now, as we speak, Morocco are building and extending their highways and railroads to Nigeria and Burkina Faso and Mali. So I mean, so there's some great things that's taking place. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, I just don't want to get stuck in the past. I want to look at what is taking place now and what does it mean for the future. And also, maybe going back to the last question, Malik, that you gave me a reference to the Caribbean, we see again the Pan-Africanist movement is taking a firm stand within BRICS. And I can't get over that. I will be at the BRICS conference in July in Rio de Janeiro. And so that's something that cannot be dismissed. I don't know if I answered everything that you wanted, but I sort of had fun talking about it.
Yeah. So as we move toward the last quarter of the program, I want to focus on Hassan, Brother Hassan Ali, his book, some of the goals and objectives around his ideas and the Bandung Conference. This is a little historical context. Back in 1955, there was a move in a Muslim country, Indonesia, for a unification coming out of colonialism from the Europeans, Afro-Asian bloc. It was significant. It was big. It led to what will come later in the non-aligned movement. And we talked about the Moroccan bloc and Mohammed V and Sekou Touré, et cetera. So Hassan, can you talk to us on the last piece of the program, your focus, the what, when, and why, and around reenacting that Bandung Conference?
Okay, you're referring to the Bandung Conference that took place in Indonesia under President Sukarno, who was the founder of modern day Indonesia, as you all know. I'm just stating that for the viewers.
Audio is bad.
Say again.
Yeah, his internet is breaking up a little bit.
The audio is bad. We can't hear him.
If you can make an adjustment.
Okay, while Hassan's doing that, Hina, you want to jump in with something for us in terms of a question that you might have for either one of these guests here we have?
Yeah, this is, of course, a question that's for everyone. So whoever wants to answer it, feel free. I know they often talk about how different movements are connected with one another. I often hear that, yes, you're great. I often hear that Black liberation and the Palestinian struggle and various different oppressed groups are all interconnected. How does Pan-Africanism kind of fall into, connecting all these different movements, and what role does it play? And I guess when I'm asking that, I mean, with Pan-Africanism, if Africans are liberated, how will that affect other marginalized and oppressed groups?
I think Palestine is going to be incorporated into the greater African community almost by necessity, all the way over to the Euphrates River and the Tigris River, because that's really the natural boundary for Africa, and it will include the peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, and all that it encompasses as well. But that's something down the road. But I think that we have to understand that we need the protection of each other. We need the strength of understanding the Sahel states are not going to make it unless the rest of Africa joins in and says, leave the Sahel states to develop, as we should have done with the Southern African states in the Patriotic Front. Otherwise, this checkerboarding is going to go on. Why, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You free one part, and then you've got another part that gets into trouble because you've got infiltration, you've got essentially invasion coming in from other states. Africa needs one army. Africa needs one currency. This is what Gaddafi and Mandela and Mugabe were doing when Gaddafi was attacked. This was the strategy. The strategy was to move in that direction. And until Africa sees itself almost like Mao saw China, or the Bolsheviks saw Russia, or the Indian people who decided that they'd had enough of colonialism and started kicking the British out in India, the same thing has to happen in Africa, or else we're going to have this creep. NATO is going to be involved in constantly coming back and creating dissension and divisive things that are going to corrupt every system. Every time we build something, it will be corrupted by these other parties. So we
Yes,
can't delude ourselves.
yeah, great point. Let's go back to
What I just want to say briefly is that this really is going to have to depend on the Arabs and the Palestinians in many respects. And I'll tell you why. And that is liberation will come to the Palestinians and the Arabs in many respects. But are they going to forget the struggles in Africa? Right now, as we talk about Gaza, we don't hear the Arab or the Palestinians talking about anything about the Sudan, which is a terrible element that's taking place. We don't hear no one really talking about the catastrophes that's taking place in Haiti. All right, that's another element of neocolonialism. We're at an unstable state. So is it going to be an element whereby, well, this is happening now, but once you get your liberation done, are you going to forget, or are you going to be true allies to the African struggle and the African American and the Afro Latino struggle?
yeah.
Because
So,
it's going to be there.
but so that's a great point. That's a great point, and that's a good point that we're going to start off part two in our next discussion on this as we expand it. I want to go back to Hassan Ali, the author of Incipients, and so Hassan, we're having some technical difficulties earlier. You want to jump in, and we're talking about, as we conclude the program, we run up on the clock here on the Muslim Street. Your reenactment, your ideas, and your vision around the importance of the reenactment of the Bandung Conference.
Yes, and I'm sorry about that technical thing. I'm not sure what that was. Can you all hear me clearly now?
Perfect.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So the Bandung Conference, I became aware of it probably, I would suspect, the same way that my brother Malik became aware of it, and that's from a historic speech of Malcolm X. And he was speaking, I think, at Reverend Albert Cleake's church up in Detroit. And he began to discuss this event, this thing, the Bandung Conference. Now, I think this speech was in the 60s. I wasn't even born when he gave the talk, but the event had taken place maybe 10 years before that talk. And President Sukarno, who was the founder of modern day Indonesia, he created this conference as a counter to this Eurocentric nonsense. And so the qualifying factor for you to be able to attend was you had to have melanin. If you didn't have melanin, you couldn't come. And so when you look at this in the context of what was taking place in the 50s and that burgeoning anti-colonialist movement that was taking place, it was revolutionary, absolutely, at that time. So what I'm envisioning is redoing it again in Indonesia in 2030, because there's several other global initiatives that will convene in 2030. And so the global attention will be focused on these sorts of gatherings. And the reason for that is because if you look at what the posture is of our federal government here, it's basically one of they are blatantly announcing that if you have melanin, you're not included in anything, this is just, there's no sort of shade being put on that. It's just blatant. So I'm not, reacting to them. I'm just, suggesting that we act in accord with our own interests. So instead of knocking at, the door of a very non-benevolent and overtly malicious former slave master, leave him be, and we do our own thing. If you look at the global South, we have people that do welcome us, this with open arms all around the world. So at that Bangdung conference, I would look at from now building up to that, and that being an event where we kick off. And I like how you mentioned the distinction between Congress and conference. I don't want it to be just a conference. I want it to
No.
be more along the lines of a congress. So the details I can go into it. You know, and thankfully, Brother Malik is saying is going to be a part 2, 3, and 4 because I see so many converging. You know, I'm honored to be here, and I realize that Brother Malik opened this platform, thankfully, for me to discuss the book. But I'm learning. I'm hearing things, and it's stimulating different thoughts. So the details of that Bang Dung 2.0, which is what we theme it, I hope we can discuss it more in the coming days. And hopefully, Brother Malik, by that time, you know, you will have been able to peruse the book and then ask me some pointed questions about things that you know, discover in the book. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for the listening audience, you can get this. Hassan, where can we pick up your book at? And one of the things that, before he tells us, I just, you know, noticed something on your caption. You talk about the sovereignty of the Black nation in the United States. Now, this is a critical historical point. As you may well know, I hold a couple of degrees in history, just like old Dr. White over here. He's just smarter than me. But one must understand that when Abraham Lincoln and the Congress signed the Emancipation Proclamation, 310 years of free labor, chattel slavery, in order to repair that, i.e. reparations, part of that is sovereignty. Return us back to the state that we were before you took us and stole us from our land. You know what they did?
Yes.
They said, you're Americans. No. They didn't even ask us, right? So that's what Malcolm... That's why Malcolm rejected it 100 years later. He said, you're not an American, right? He said, no. He said, if you were an American, you wouldn't be having to fight in the streets, to eat at their restaurants and to drink on their water fountains, right? Mm-hmm. And he lined it up and he said, being born in America doesn't make you an American no more than if a cat has kittens in the oven, makes them biscuits, right? So they never asked us. Mm-hmm. And this question of sovereignty that Hassan Ali raises in the book, we're looking to hear more from you about that because that's a critical.
Can I make one statement, Brother Malik?
Yes.
I know you got to shut it down, but I just want to speak to that point. So if you go to page 40 of my book, I put the only graphic in the book. So if you add up the contiguous United States, you're looking at, I think it came to 16.4 billion acres of land. That means mineral rights, you know, what's under the ground, what's above the ground, what you grow on it. This was all gotten by the people that hijacked this landmass, right? Before even Alaska and Hawaii, for free. Now you're looking at 400 some odd years of free labor to work that land, right? So now when you look at us now, and we're in a position where the country has $38 trillion of debt, first of all, how do you go in debt when someone gives you 16.4 billion free acres of land and 400 years of free labor to work it? How do you even have debt? Now, the most egregious part of that is just not their criminal accounting and theft and the games they're playing with their wicked fiat currency. It's that not only did we not benefit from the 16.4 billion acres of land and that free labor, we have to bear the burden of the $38 trillion in debt. How does that work? I'm talking about the people of color in this country. How that is such an outrageous theft that is not spoken of. It's unbelievable. We don't have 1% of this land, and we're 13 to 15% of the population.
And one thing I want to add at that critical junction of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1860, January 1st, and how hypocritical Abraham Lincoln was. 7 months prior to that, May of 1862. Did anybody know what happened vis-a-vis land? You want to know what happened? He created and Congress passed what was known as the Homestead Act in 1862, yes. Right?
That's right.
7 months before slavery ended. And in that Homestead Act, they told all the white people, 7 months before they freed us, told all the white people to line up on the prairie and at the sound of the gun, go get you 160 acres of land free. All you got to do is work for 5 years, is yours for free. 160 acres apiece. Now, let me quarterback this for you as we close this out. This hypocrisy of the construct of white power is that it is this: that if I have a cousin named John. And he has a cousin named Bill. And he has a cousin named Sam. And he has so on and so on. All of them lined up, bro. And they created wealth. As Adam Smith said, wealth is built upon over generations. This is the basis of the wealth and the taking of the West during that Homestead Act and the hypocrisy of Abraham Lincoln. He was not interested in sovereignty for Black people. They were interested in exactly where we ended up. And that is what Malcolm talked about, still struggling over issues 100 years from now, right? So I want to close this program out. Again, this is the Muslim Street. I want to thank my co-host, Hina Lotus. Also, Dr. Viper White for joining us. Art Mobley of the Darfur 23. Lance for quarterbacking this all the way from Ghana. And again, part 2, part 3, part 4. We want to use this as a basis for organizing session the next day. We're not here to talk to each other and everybody has some excellent points. But until we organize around those points and organize with others who are doing the work on the ground that we mentioned earlier, there's some serious brothers and sisters around the world who are working on the same issues that we are. It's up to us to link up with them and let's move it forward. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining the Muslim Street. You can find us at www.street.com. And also, I want to give a shout out before we go to where we can find our guests and their works. Dr. White, what can people find you and also plug into your works? I know that you just wrote a book yourself. We have to have you on just to talk about that.
It's hard to hear you. You're breaking up very badly on my end. But I gather I have a new book called Blacklisted, The Price for Speaking Truth. And this is very important to all of us because all of us, when we become truth tellers, we pay a heavy price. Our character is attacked, our families are attacked, our money base is attacked. Right? So therefore, it's our story. But as we are revolutionaries, like the sister stated, and what Brother Ali has demonstrated, and all my other brothers have on the panel, is that we're going to do this because we don't have choice. So if you have a chance, pick up the piece. It's on Amazon.com, forward by Cornell West, and I think it's one of the most important books of the last 5 years in our struggle for survival and our struggle to achieve and our ability to list who the real enemies are and why we have no choice but to come together among ourselves.
Okay, great.
Thank
great.
you.
Art,
Very much.
Great. Art, where can people reach you at?
Well, I'll be back on this program when we can reconvene, and that would be the best place, and we can kind of continue from there. But I really want us to watch what's going on in the Sahel states right now, what's going on in Burkina Faso. Give the brother there as much support as we possibly can because his life is in danger and threatened, but not just his. Assimi Goita, who's next door in Mali, and Domboure in Niger, and we need to shelter and watch all of those leaders and make sure that they can carry on that mission that they're involved in today. Everybody needs to be involved in that.
Okay, we want to thank our guests, Hassan Ali, Dr. White, Art Mobley, and on behalf, this is Malik Aziz on behalf of Hina Lotus and our producer, Lance Scurv. This is the Muslim Street. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same station. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Salam.
Very good.